Hey, it's Rachel with Drug Free Birth, and I want to come on here really quick, make a video for you because I got a question from a client earlier today, and I want to address it because it is a little bit of a tricky question, and I know a lot of parents have this same question, especially my clients. So my clients are generally expecting couples who are seeking unmedicated childbirth, and so already they're kind of thinking outside the box, right? So one of my main questions that I get typically towards the end of a series of courses is, hey, how do I find a great pediatrician? How do I find a pediatrician that will either share my values or support my personal values without pressuring me to do certain procedures and possibly inoculations that maybe I'm either A, not comfortable with, or B, just need more time to do research on until I am comfortable, or C, or maybe C, D, just want to space out for my little one. And I've worked in child development, child care, and education for a long time, and I've had a lot of experience with different family groups and religions, for example, who really don't want certain vaccines, for example, for their children that are strictly religious. Others want that type of freedom for personal values reasons, and others are looking more at statistics and such and wanting to maybe perhaps not overwhelm the child's system early on. And then others are more watching the medical community in general and looking at trends and just noticing that perhaps the CDC recommended vaccine schedule has changed over the years, and they want time to really think about that and interpret that. Certainly in our parents' generation, the vaccine schedule looked very different than what it does, say, for our generation when we were children. And now certainly even the kindergartners walking around today have had a different schedule than, say, the newborns being born right now here in early 2025. So the question is, hey, I've already done this delicate dance with my OB, and I've already explained to my OB perhaps that I want to maybe be able to eat and drink, say, when I'm having my baby, or I want to have freedom of movement when I'm having my baby, or maybe I want to labor at home a little bit, or maybe I don't want pain meds, for example. And the couples have learned how to communicate clearly with their doctors, how they have come up with a plan for their doctors, and then how they have remained good advocates for each other and themselves in hospital and in clinic situations. So now let's transfer that advocacy piece to the pediatrics office, okay? And a lot of these couples, they are wanting to have some wiggle room when it comes to specifically the vaccine schedule, okay? Now, I'm not some anti this or pro that, but what I do like is being able to come to certain terms on my own terms, make decisions with my husband for the care of our children, and then have a doctor to back us up and to support the decisions that we make. One small example is, can I or would that doctor be supportive if I choose, say, some homeopathic remedies in conjunction with pharmaceuticals? Could we kind of do those together while we monitor our children? And I have found a pediatric doctor that really is very open to that. So, hey, the pediatric doctor that we've chosen has said, hey, if I'm going to prescribe you something, it's for a reason. It's going to be after a conversation that we have, and I'm going to learn a lot about your lifestyle, not just look at a symptom and check a box. And I like that. That's somebody that I had been waiting for, to be honest with you, after we got fired from our first pediatric office. Okay. So let me paint the picture a little bit for you. Let me tell you some strategies that I have seen to work in the past, and then give you some encouragement to find your pediatric office that works for you. Okay. So back when we had our first child, now he's now 11 years old, so this was 10, 11 years ago. My husband and I, we were just very green parents. Okay, we didn't know a lot of our friends with babies yet. We didn't have a lot of friends with babies yet. We were one of the first in our friend group actually to get married and then to have our children. So we were coming at this a little bit blind, And because I had already been in childcare for so long and I'd already interacted with just vaccine records in general, I began to form my own conclusions and say, you know what? I think what I'd like to do is learn more before I go on this journey, that maybe this journey that begins really at day one of life, hour one at life, and ends at, say, 18, 19 years old. Let me do some research. And the first pediatric office that we were at, what I chose to do was when it was vaccine day, um, and the nurse practitioner might come in and say, okay, we've got the height, the weight, all that good stuff taken care of. Let's go ahead and get him prepped. If I wasn't feeling comfortable, what I would say is actually, we are going to wait on that procedure and we're going to revisit next month when we see you again. And for the first couple of times that I chose to do that, I was given a sheet of paper saying that, asking for my signature, saying that I was declining a recommended procedure and I was going against our doctor's wishes, but that it was certainly my right to do so. Now, I have seen on forums and such that some mommies don't even sign that, right? So I wasn't going to go that far, just personally for me, but some have their own reasons for doing that. But I chose to sign every time. But I would also ask for the literature, say, hey, can you give me a package insert to take a look at? Can you get me maybe some statistics that you were just mentioning? Can I see that in writing? Can you tell me about some studies maybe I could take a look at? Okay, or some reputable websites or articles. Okay, so then they would inundate me with literature, which I was very grateful for. And then my husband and I would have very thoughtful conversations about it, right? So that's, in my opinion, a good dance that a pediatric doctor and a family can do. Now, after around 5, 6 months of life, we began to see signage at this doctor's office that read something similar to, hey, if you happen to not want to get your child caught up with the CDC regs, then we need to dismiss you as a patient. So I saw this coming up. So it wasn't a surprise because there was one appointment at the last one, I suppose. And they said, you know what, we've got a new policy and we're going to actually have to dismiss you. So this will either be our last appointment or you'll have one more or something like that. So let us know where we can transfer your records, and all of that. And so we left without a fight. We understood that this was probably going to come down and they probably would not grandfather us in, and we were okay with that. So we began to look around. And that's when I really began to see you can't just call up a pediatric office and have them always tell you that they're going to allow some wiggle room, because they've got people to answer to. They've got a board, perhaps. They've got some directors that they need to answer to. And the pressure is really coming down from top down, that most of these hospital systems and most of these independent doctors are getting immense pressure to get every single patient on board. Now, it was somehow, by the by, I got some information about a pediatric doctor who allowed more freedom. I said nothing over the phone. We ended up enrolling in their practice, and we had our first appointment. So the first appointment, they do the vitals, all that, by the nurse practitioner or whatever. Then the actual doctor comes in. She shuts the door and she says, "So, how'd you find me?" I felt like I was in like some underground doctor's office, to be honest with you, in some back alley. And I was like, "Well, what do you mean?" And she said, "The word on the street is that people are saying I'm this anti-vax doctor and I'm not." And I said, "Look, no one's told me anything, but I'm looking for a doctor that will allow me time to read." And that's all I said. And we had this understanding. And she said, I'll tell you what, are you one of these kooks?" She asked me if I'm one of these kooks that only comes in an emergency and never gives their child medicine and all this stuff. And I said, "No, you'll see us plenty, I'm sure. We're not anti-medicine at all, but we don't want the pressure of getting on board with something that possibly could be taken off the schedule in years' time when more research comes down the line." And she understood what I was saying, and we've had a great relationship. Okay, so she actually sees all three of my children. And she's great. But she has told me explicitly, don't tell your friends about me. Don't advertise for me. I am getting so much pressure from my peers, from I guess the medical boards or whatnot, that I need to get on board. Meaning I need to start requiring all of my patients to get on the CDC schedule. I told you that there are certain populations that their religion does not want them getting certain vaccines because of the ingredient list. Well, I'm just looking at face value. This particular doctor may very well be part of this one religion. It's marked by a certain demographic of people, and I've never asked her, but that is a thought I had. And so I really respect that if that's her religion and she chooses to hold off, for example, for her own family, she's going to allow that as well for her families that she sees. Okay. So let me just kind of give you a tip here when it comes to choosing a pediatric office. Okay. So number one, I have heard news, in fact, just today from the couple that mentioned that I mentioned, there are websites now for pediatric doctors that explicitly will say, I think it's because they're getting so many phone calls about this. They explicitly say, if you do not want to go onto the CDC schedule completely and by the letter, please do not enroll here, or we will not accept you as a patient, is really what they're saying. Okay. So when it's blaringly obvious like that, I think that it's a great thing to know at the very beginning. In fact, that's how I was kind of shopping around way back. And I was naive enough to call these doctors and say, hey, if we choose not to do the full schedule exactly to the letter, can we still be a patient? And I got a lot of resounding no's. And one by a very respected doctor right here in my area. And so I knew that I was going to have to dig a little deeper with some of these other doctors. So we're still seeing that, of course. Now, if there is a pediatric office that just does not have that signage, then I think that there's nothing wrong with going on, declaring them as your pediatric office, having your first couple of appointments, and then if you choose to hold off or to wait or to ask more questions or to request literature or to request second opinions about certain procedures and recommended treatments for your child, as long as it's not like a code red and there's an emergency and blood or fire or anything like that, then I think you could feel comfortable going in there in clinic, talking to the doctor, and maybe even saying, actually, we would like to decline this, or we'd like to wait on this. Now, if there's too much pressure from higher up and the doctor says, I'm sorry, we're going to have to dismiss you, that is the name of today's game, to be honest with you. But I do believe that there are doctors out there, because I'm speaking from experience, my doctor can't be the only one, who will have a conversation, adult to adult, inside, behind closed doors, and allow these families to make their own choices. Now, is there incredible pressure on these doctors? Yes. Is there discrimination, perhaps between doctors and between doctor and patient? Yes, there is still there. Now, I have a lot of hope that the pendulum is actually going to swing in the other direction. I believe people are going to start respecting parents who want more time, want more to read, want more research done, want more papers published before they make certain decisions. Just because there's so much right now on the schedule, there's a lot of research to still do, right? So I do believe that doctors are going to start kind of coming out of the closet a little bit and allowing their patients this time. Are they going to advertise it though in 2025? Probably not. Okay. Are they going to feel a lot of pressure right now to tell you over the phone what the written policy is? Of course. All right. Do we have a right to decline procedures? Yeah, we certainly do. Do we want to do our research? Do we want to make sure we understand the benefits, the risks, the auxiliary maybe risks or difficulties that we can face if we don't choose this but choose this, and opposite, and vice versa? Yes. So as parents, we have to be vigilant. We have to be readers. We have to understand what the research is telling us. We have to understand how to find credible websites out there. We have to understand who to talk to. Okay. But is it a federal offense to decline a a certain procedure for our children? Not yet. Okay, so the federale is going to come to our door if we don't do X, Y, or Z? No. Um, Again, now that we've experienced a little bit of change when it comes to health, public health, I do believe that we're going to see some change there. So I hope that that has helped. Okay. If you have questions, if you'd like to continue this conversation, let me know. I'm happy to do so. The reason why I wanted to create this video is because certainly I'm going to, broach this concept in class. But I wanted to really go into detail here, and it might not, we might not have quite enough time to go way into all the nuance there. Okay. So thank you again. Happy parenting.